What's happening with everybody? This is Hayden Adams with The Designer Who Codes. In this video, we're taking a look at how to build a simple contact form and have it email us when we hit the submit button. Let's give this a try so I can show you what it looks like on the finished product. I'll type my information in. I'm not going to use the phone number for right now. That's optional. And I'll put my email address in. And just like that, I'll just say test for more info. When I submit this information, what's going to happen is it's going to email me the results. So if I go to my email, go take a look over here, what I get back is the Designer Who Codes channel. Hello, a new form has been submitted. First name, last name, no phone number, and email. I'm going to walk you through both how to design the form and have it email you upon the submission of your information. And with that, let's get started. All right, so what I have here is a basic template. Now, I am a huge fan of Bootstrap because it just makes everything that much easier. So what I've done already is I went to getbootstrap.com, hit up the docs page, and down here in the quick start, right down here at number 2, I copied and pasted the doc type information and dropped it in. What I've also gone and did was also added a custom CSS file, which is absolutely empty. Nothing up my sleeves, nothing to see here. So we can see if we just type body and type background color, let's go the purple color. It's working just fine. Now that we have the CSS in place and the index HTML page, it's time to actually build this form. Now again, I'm going to use the elements of Get Bootstrap to build the form because it already brings in certain elements that just makes it that much easier. And then I'll go into custom CSS and do some extra tweaking to make it my own design. If I go to the Bootstrap demo and contact us, I first want to bring in a container. So in the body, I'm going to say div class container. That's going to allow me to move the breakpoints within Bootstrap. And I'll bring up the H1 just so it's in there. So we have a contact and we have the H1. Again, all this really does is the container holds my information safe so that when it goes from a large size of a desktop to a small size to a mobile device, the container contains certain breakpoints within to move the design. After this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building my form. After the H1, I'm going to come down here and say form. We're going to add more to this form later on, but for right now, let's get the style first and the actual working elements second. After this form, I'm going to say div class, and I'm going to say row and G3. What this is going to do is allow me to have a 2-column design on a on a desktop and a tablet, and a 1-column design on a mobile website, so it can be responsive. That's where the row comes in, and the G is for the gutters inside the actual form. G3, there's G0 to G5. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a div class, and we'll say call LG6. Now, Bootstrap works on a 12-column design. What this means, if I say the word test, let's just copy and paste this and drop it in. Oops, that's not going to work. That's going to work. So if we have 2 of these right here, if there's a 12 columns, 6 columns and 6 columns equals 50% and 50%. So we can say 50% and we can say 50%. And what this will allow you to do is to create a 2-column design within your form. Now, the great part about this is if I were to move my browser, poof, just like that, it goes to a 1-column design. There's various breakpoints within Bootstrap, and I set anything smaller than a large scale size, drop it to a 1-column design. Now, I can also say medium. So if I said, you know what? I don't need to have it be 1 column yet. I can then go right back to medium. If I said, you know what, when it hits small, just like that, now we drop down to 1 column or a call 12 in this design. In this case, I'm going to go back to the large. To me, I like the large size overall. I'll save that. And when I bring it back, it now goes 2-column design. That's how we can first make our form absolutely responsive from the very beginning. Awesome. Now that we have that, I'm going to take out this 50%. And now what I want to bring in is a label. So we'll say label, and we'll say for. What is this for? This is for the first name. So I'm going to say first name is the for, and I'm going to add the class of form label, and we'll drop it down, and I'm going to say first name. And now we have the first name sitting right here. Now, if we go below the label, what I want to do is I'm going to say input, and I'll say type is going to be text, as is just the first name. Just for spacing, I'm going to drop this down just like that. We're going to have some more content anyways down the road. So type is going to be text. The class is going to be form control. That's part of Bootstrap. And the ID for accessibility is going to match the word for. So I'm going to say ID. That's a lot of stuff around the ID. ID equals, and if we want to copy and paste it just so we're absolutely crystal clear, it's the same, first name and first name. Now after that, what we also want to do is we want an aria described by. That's going to describe what we're doing in this input field. This is going to say first name to capture the first name information. After that, we're going to say name. This is going to relate to the email that you saw when it actually gets submitted. We're going to say name equals, name equals quotes, first name. Now this one actually can have a space. It's going to be passed through the form at the very top and get parsed through it. So you'll see the word first name show up on your email down the road. Let's just close this one up. Other direction would be really helpful. And now I have the input. If we save it, hey, check a look. First name. There we are. Now, that's really, we got to fix that blue later on. We'll work on that part. Let's get a little more elements within the HTML first, and then we'll come back and stylize it in CSS. All right, we got the first name, so you know what we're going to do next. We're going to go down to here, drop it down, and we'll take out that 50% because we want to duplicate this essentially and say last name. So what we're going to do, make sure I got the indentation properly noted, label for equals last name. Now this one is using camel case with a capital N and no space. And this one I'm going to say is class form label. Usually text it. There we go. And in here, we're of course going to say last name. And there we go. Last name, looking good. So after that, what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to say input, and I'll close it. I'll make the return key to drop it down, and I'll put the indentation just so we can do a little bit like this as well down here. I'm going to say type equals text. Class is going to be form control. ID, of course, is going to match the word last name. So we'll say ID last name. The aria described by, it'll essentially describe what we're working on. And in here, what I'm going to do is, of course, say last name. And the name here is going to be passed through the form. So we'll say last space name. I just capitalized them, but that's up to you. Doesn't matter which way you want to have it. And now we have last name right here and first name right here. I'm not too worried about the design, but if you love the blue glow, hey, stick with that. I'm going to take it out later on in CSS, but for right now, I'm going to keep it just the way it is. Awesome. So we have our two columns, column 6, column 6. If it's 12 columns, the next column is going to go right down below here as it goes up to 12 columns. So what I'm going to do is go out of this div to make sure we're in the right space. And I'm going to say div class. Now what I want to do here is that this next area is going to be for my phone number, and the phone number is not going to be that long. I keep these kind of equal just because I'm thinking someone might have a long first name or a long last name, and so they're the equally spaced size. For the phone number, it's going to be shorter because the next one is going to be the email address, which will inevitably be longer than the phone number. So in the div class for this one, I'm going to say call, but I'm not going to say 6. I'm going to say call LG. So it's got the same breakpoint, the large and the large. I'm going to say 5. So now this one is 5/12 if we do the math. And so what happens is, we can't really see it right here. We'll see the next one. But the next column, if we go 12, has to be 7. So what I'll do here is say div class call LG7, and this column is 7/12. So notice now how this column is shorter than the 6 because it's working on a 12 column design. So for me, I want to have, again, the phone number on the left and the email address on the right. So on this part, what I'm going to do is, again, kind of replicate the input. So the input, we're going to change the 5/12. We're going to say input in here, and we'll close it, return key down, and we'll also just hit return key just so it's easier to read a little bit more in this area. I'm going to say type. Now I am going to say text because someone might put a parenthesis and or a dash. So to me, I'm not too worried how they enter the phone number in as long as they give it to me. So the type is going to be text. The class is going to be form control. And then the ID. Oh, I just realized I forgot the label above it. Let's finish the input and I'll go backwards on this one. I just totally spaced. I'm typing things, looking at the input. I totally forgot the label. In this case, I'm going to say phone number for the ID, the ARIA label by, there we go, is phone number, and the name is going to be phone number. Now again, I kind of went backwards on this one. I should have added the label first, but you know what? It's going to look like this one by itself with no label. So then if I say go back up here and we say label, let's just focus on the input, couldn't remember it. I'm going to say label for, and of course we're going to then replicate this ID. So we'll make sure it's label for phone number, and class is going to be form label. This one might not fit, so we're just going to say phone number. And there we are right here. Now we'll do the email address. So we'll come down to the 7 one right here on the 7/12. I will not forget the email address label. Hopefully I will not. Let's do label for equals, and we can say email. The class is going to be form label, and we'll say email address. There we go. Now we have the email address. What I next want to do is build the actual form. So we'll add the input, and the input is going to be input. We're going to say type equals email, not text. So make sure it captures the at and the period to equate to an email address. You know what? We're going to run out of space here. So we'll just drop it down again, just so I don't run out of room on my screen. There we go. Little cleanup on aisle 2. Type is going to be email. Class going to be form control. The ID is going to equal email. This one's pretty easy, at least. The ARIA described by, usually would catch it, but it's not catching it today, is email. And then we're also going to add, actually, we'll just close it up. Oh, we also have to add the name. I thought I was missing something. And we'll say email. And for the sake of keeping it consistent, I'm going to capitalize the E. So we have first name, last name, phone number, email address. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a giant message area for someone to write me an essay if they want, or just giving them space to vent or whatever they want to do. So this last stage is going to be a 1-column design. Now, I am going to keep it inside the columns just because I do have this gutter going on. So what I'm going to do is go outside of this div, but I'm still going to say div class. Now this one's going to be a full column, so I can say call and just say call 12. And what this will look like is just the word test, but it's going to take up the entire space across. So essentially this is 12 out of 12 columns, or 100%. So again, it's hard to see it at just this very second, But if we look at this again, if we move it, hey, this is looking really sharp. First, last, phone number, email address. We're going to add a message area and a button below it to say, basically, submit the information. Let's put it back where it is. Awesome. Scroll this little puppy up and we'll take out the 1212 column piece here. And what we're going to add next is going to be everyone's favorite label. Make sure I don't forget this one. And again, what I'll do is I'll close it up. Nope, don't worry about that piece right now. I'll say label and I'll say for, and I'm going to say more information. And after that, I'll say class and we'll say form label. And it did fit, but I just forgot I should have actually kept that label piece. Talking and typing every so often. So we'll say more info. And just like that, we have our label. Now what we're going to do is not add an input, but I'm going to say text area. And we'll say this one's actually going to have an open and a close. Now keep in mind, do not put space between your open and close. If you put a space here like a return key, what'll happen is there is an actual space inside this area. So for what I'm going to do is this is actually going to go right up to the very top. Thought I could move it back. And there we go. So again, it's something small, but it actually does create a space inside the text area if you do not keep these next to each other with actually no space in between. Normally I don't mind it, but the text area is actually an interesting little beast to be reckoned with. So this I'm going to say text area class, form control, and let's actually put a space. Oh, no. Form dash space. I forgot the actual space, form control. Let's actually drop this down because we can drop the text area down as long as we keep it actually not open and closed with a space inside of there. Class is form control. Name is going to be more information. And we'll add the ID of more information. Now we also identify as how many rows we want inside this area. I generally like to give 3, so I'm going to say rows equals 3 just for space. And just like magic, it creates the space in here. Now you can take this one out, but I do like to keep it just in case someone wants to add more information, they want to see it. I like how you can shift this up and down, but by default it will go to 3 lines. Line 1, 2, and 3. And of course they can keep going and keep going and keep going. So that can just keep scrolling indefinitely as you want it. Awesome. We have our form. It looks pretty good, but we also need a little button to submit the information. So this one can go outside the actual rows. It's not that important. So making sure that this div goes to this div. Thank you, VS Code. You are amazing. And we're going to add a button. So we'll say button. In here, the type is going to be submit. We're going to submit the information. We're going to add a couple things to our class. There actually are button classes within Bootstrap. So I'm going to say BTN and then BTN outline dark and add a margin top of 3 in here as well. Open and close this one and we'll say submit the information. Magic. Now we're looking good. Of course, if we submit, nothing's going to happen right now. We actually haven't made the form work. So it's looking pretty good, but I want to go now that we have it all laid out, and I want to go inside of the custom CSS. If you are wanting to stylize the button a little more, within React Bootstrap, if we scroll down, where is that little button? There it is. Buttons come in all shapes and sizes. Again, you can have primary, secondary, all different colors. I went down here and I used the outline of the dark. So BTN outline dark. You can do all sorts of things. Depends what you want to do for your button within Bootstrap. Cool. So now what I want to do is I want to make this a little more stylized because it's not looking phenomenal quite yet. What I also want to do with this phone number is I want to give someone information to say, please type in their area code, just because I want to give someone some help. And I won't put it as a placeholder, but I'm going to put it right below the phone number. So I'm going to scroll back up to the phone number. And after the input, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something new. After the input, I'm going to say div class. I'm going to say form text. And in here, I'll say, please include your area code. And it adds a little information right below it. And it does give it a lighter color text as like more information about the actual form that you're going to fill out. Cool. We've got this looking pretty good, but we can make this look a lot better in CSS. So I'm going to head over to the custom CSS area. Now I did pull in some extra Google fonts. If you want to, you can head over to Google Fonts and grab some fonts if you want. I've already done this previously. It's really easy to use. You just have to click the font and essentially, oh, mine got a little truncated. But if we show it, you can click on Get Font and you can get the font. In this case, I'm going to bring over what I have over here from the screen is I've got the Roboto Slab font. I use the import in the CSS for this. I'm going to do is I'm going to stylize these labels and the H1 using this Roboto Slab. So I'm going to say H1, comma, label, and in here, the font family, I'm actually going to bring it in, I'm not going to mistype this one, is going to be Roboto Slab, and just like that, it comes in. I'm going to do one more thing. Font optical sizing is going to be auto, and the font weight, I'm going to keep it 400 for this design. So we will drop the H1 down a little bit and just keep these all just normal book weight style font. And we're going to say font style is going to be normal. Nothing to see, nothing to worry about, just a couple extra settings to be set up to go. Now, what I also found was that to me, if I think about this design, if I make this go way, way, way out, this is really hard to use. If someone's got a modern day desktop screen, this huge form is showing up, and to me, this is just massive. No one's going to type easily across this entire screen. I want to build a single column width that's more like a narrow column within this Bootstrap framework. So what I'm going to do is one, bring back my screen. Well, that's a little big. Let's keep it right there. Is I'm going to say single call. And this one's going to be a max width of 750 pixels. In here, and we'll say margin 0 auto to put it in the middle of the page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that single call class and come to my index page, come way, way up to the container, and we'll say container space single call. Now it doesn't look much different on this screen, but when I pull it out, now it doesn't move. If you look at it, if you think about it, it's much easier to use a narrower column design than a wider column design. So again, this is easier to fill out versus that way long form I had before. Let's pull this back. There we go. So for the label, when I designed this, it wasn't the right size. I want to make these labels just a little bit larger in the custom CSS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say label and just add a font size of 1.05 rem, just to give it a slightly bigger size. That's just how I thought the slab serif was just needing a little extra boost within the label size. Now, what I also want to do is I want to add a little extra space to push them apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say both form, comma, and then form label. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to say margin bottom, and I'm just going to give it a little 2 pixels, just a little extra space between the two of them. For me, it was a little tight, and I like to give it a little more space inside of here. So just again, a little bit of space. That's all I'm trying to do. I can just set the 2 pixel number. What I also want to do, if you look at it, is this giant blue box shows up, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm going to say form control, and this is going to be colon focus. So when someone focuses on this form, I'm going to say box shadow, not sizing. I thought I caught it right. Box shadow, I'm going to say none. And just like that, hey, check it out. There's no more box shadow. Now, it does show up with this typical blue. If you're cool with that, totally fine. Keep it. I'm going to just set a different color in this design. I'm going to say border color, just so you can see it change. I'm going to say green for right now. But now you have a green border box in which to work with. Mine, I had a different color, so I'm going to say 00627F. In the hexadecimal, like a little teal kind of color just for my design. And now I have this teal approach showing up within my colors, and it's looking that much better. Oh, this is looking gorgeous when it comes to a contact form. It's looking good, but we have to make it work so it emails us. And for this to email us, we have to use some kind of service. What I found to work great is Web3 Forms. Hopefully it's going to fit on the page. And the great part about Web3 Forms is there is no sign up required for this to work. Now, just so you are aware, just the limitations of, if you do have a larger project, you only get 250 monthly submissions for free. If you do want to go beyond that, they have a $12 a month plan for yearly billing. That is 20,000 monthly subscriptions or submissions, which you can subscribe on a pro plan. If you've got that many things, you can keep going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But for me, I've used before as the free plan. I can just add either my clients or my email address, and it's got a built-in CAPTCHA integration system. So when I say see instructions, it literally goes down from the home page. So if we're back to web3forms.com, put the link in the description below. If we scroll down, we have to create this access key. I'm going to create it on a separate screen just so I can make it work, but we're going to build everything around it to add the access key. We're going to get an email once you fill this out and says, hey, create the access key. It'll send it to you, and we're going to plug it in a second. So assuming you've already done this, we've added the access key. Let me hide Safari. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to build the rest of the form based upon that access key. So if we come back up here, the Bootstrap demo and the index page, we're going to focus on this form tag to start. Now this is where I am going to copy and paste something so I don't mess it up. I'm going to head up to documentation, and right up here at the very top is the installation. And what I'm looking for is step 1, we've got our access key, and step 2 is to generate the HTML form. We've got it pretty well built, but I need 2 elements inside the form tag. I'm going to grab the action, which is api.web3forms.com/submit, and our method is going to be post. So what I'll do is I'll come back here, actually just hide Safari. I'll come back to my form. I'll drop it down. And what I'll do is inside the form tag, I'm going to bring in the action, which is the API, and the method post. Now we have to use that key still. So we're going to go back to the installation, and we're going to look for this input access key right here. So if we copy and paste this input, and we drop it within the form. So we'll make sure we're inside the form tag. The input is going to be type hidden. The name is going to be access key, and this is where in your email address, you're going to drop your access key. So don't forget to do that first step first. And if we just save this and hide Safari, notice that it doesn't show up. So the type is going to be hidden. I do want to add 2 more input types just to make the email look a little cleaner. I'm going to say input type is going to be hidden again. And in here, just so you can read a little better on this narrower design, I'll hit type hidden, and I'll just drop it down just so we have a little more room to work with in this area. Type hidden, we're going to say name is going to be subject, and we'll say value is going to be in here, new contact form submission. And then we'll do one more input. So we'll say input. We'll open and close it again, just so we have it for readability. And inside this last input, we're going to say type. You guessed it, it's going to be hidden. And in here, we're going to say name and give it a form name. So we'll say name is going to be form underscore name. And the value is going to be the name of our form. So we can say in this case, we'll say equals, and we'll call it a contact form. or I can also give it the name of my business. So my email address before was ADWC from a designer who codes, so I know what it's coming from. And now when I save this, again, nothing's going to show up, but it really should work. Fingers crossed. So I'll say first name, last name. We won't need a phone number for right now. Email address. It's going to be my email address. Then we'll say more info, test. And the cool part about this is this will work anywhere. So I'm just running a basic server on my computer, form submitted successfully, go back. So now when I check my email, if I come back on the screen, and what does pop up is again, comes up and says, hello, new form has been submitted, ADWC, new contact form submission on this email. And now you have a working email. One last thing I want to show you though. What can also happen if you don't set certain parameters, if I say submit the information, it all submits. But obviously what I want to have happen is I want someone to fill out the first name, the last name. The phone number is not important, but I want someone to fill out the email address. So what I want to do is I want to add the word required. And the word required just says require this information. So if we come back down on this page, I want to make sure someone fills out the first name. So inside the input, I'm going to say required. And after that, now when I try to fill this information out, hey, please fill out this field right there. You can guess we're going to do the same thing for the last name. So we'll say last name input, and we'll say required. Now I do want the email address so I can email this person back, and I want more information. I don't know if I want or not, but I'll put in there for the fun of it. And phone number, we're going to also ignore. So we'll come down, email address, scroll down the page. We're going to say required. More info I do want to have, so we will have the more info be required, just so someone can tell me about their life story. Now when I try it again, I've saved it. Yep, we're good. That's me. Last name has to be filled out. Should you know the email address? Yep, that's correct. Yep, there we go. It's missing the @ sign. And we should have it where, yeah, we got to fill this one out too. And we'll say test. And just like that, the form has been submitted successfully with no signups required using the Web3 forms in a custom and, of course, responsive web design.